The invitation came as a text message with a photo of gleaming marble countertops. Housewarming at my new luxury apartment. Finally living somewhere that matches my success level. Hope you can make it, sis. Jake, I stared at the address while reviewing monthly reports from my property management company, 1247 Metropolitan Heights, Unit 3C. The address was familiar because I'd been looking at this building's financials all morning. Metropolitan Heights was one of my more challenging acquisitions. A distressed high-rise I'd purchased for $34 million 2 years ago after the previous owner defaulted during the market downturn. My stepbrother Jake, who'd spent 5 years telling anyone who'd listen that I was a minimum wage failure, was throwing his housewarming party at a building I owned. Jake had been part of my family for 12 years, ever since my mother married his father when I was 16. In all that time, he'd never once asked about my actual career. He simply assumed that because I lived modestly and drove a practical car, I must be struggling. What he didn't know was that his failure of a stepsister had quietly built a real estate portfolio worth $156 million over the past decade. Metropolitan Heights had been a particularly satisfying purchase. I'd bought it at a steep discount, invested $8 million in upgrades, and transformed it into one of the city's most desirable luxury buildings. It now maintained a 97% occupancy rate. Jake's corner unit, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and city views, rented for $4,200 a month. He was paying that rent to me. I decided to attend, partly out of curiosity, partly because I hadn't seen that side of the family in months. I arrived in a simple black dress, carrying a modest gift. The lobby looked exactly as I'd intended during the renovation. Marble floors, contemporary lighting, a concierge desk I'd personally approved. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and followed the sound of music and conversation to Unit 3C. Jake greeted me at the door with an expression that mixed surprise with mild embarrassment. "Emma, you actually came." He gestured at the space around him. "I wasn't sure this kind of place was really your scene." "It's lovely," I said. "Congratulations on the new apartment." "Thanks. I finally made it somewhere that actually reflects my income level." He smiled. "It feels good to live somewhere that matches real success." The comment stung. I kept my expression neutral and followed him inside. The apartment was full. 30 people, wine glasses, catered appetizers, family members I recognized, my stepfather Robert, Jake's sister Kelly, who worked in finance, several cousins from both sides of our blended family. "Everyone, you remember my stepsister Emma," Jake announced. "She managed to make it tonight, despite her busy work schedule." The way he said busy work schedule left no doubt about what he meant. Kelly glanced over. "We don't usually see you at events in this part of town." "I manage," I said simply. For the next hour I circulated, listening to conversations about salary increases, career milestones, and the staggering cost of living in this neighborhood. The building's rental rates came up more than once, always in impressed, reverent tones. Someone marveled that $4,200 a month was more than some people earned in 3 months. Jake basked in all of it, giving impromptu tours of the premium appliances, the marble bathroom, the spectacular view. "This is what happens when you work hard and make smart moves," he told one group. "You earn the right to live in places like this." My stepfather Robert found me by the floor-to-ceiling windows sometime later. "Jake's done well for himself," he said warmly. Then, with genuine kindness, "Emma, you might want to think about what he's accomplished here. Maybe it would inspire you to aim a little higher." "I'll definitely consider that," I said. By 9:30, Jake had had several glasses of wine and decided it was time for a speech. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate this milestone." He raised his glass. "This apartment represents more than just a place to live. It represents the reward for hard work, smart decisions, and refusing to settle for less than you deserve." Applause. Nodding. Murmurs of agreement. Some people are content to work basic jobs, live modestly, and never aspire to anything better. And that's fine. Someone has to work minimum wage, right? He paused, letting that land. But the people in this room are different. I felt eyes beginning to drift toward me. "My stepsister Emma is here tonight, and I want her to see what's possible when you refuse to settle. Emma, you've been working the same office job for years, living in that little apartment, driving that old car. But look around you," he gestured broadly. "This is what success actually looks like." The room went quiet. "You don't belong in nice places like this." His voice was getting louder now, gaining momentum. "Minimum wage workers like you ruin neighborhoods like this. They bring down property values and change the whole character of an area. Look at you." He gestured toward my dress, my shoes. "You can't even afford to dress appropriately for a place like this." It's embarrassing. Kelly nodded. Jake's right. There are standards to maintain in buildings like this. Robert said nothing. People like Emma don't understand what it takes to earn your way into luxury, Jake continued. They think they're entitled to be included in everything, but they haven't put in the work. I set down my water glass. I picked up my purse. You're absolutely right, Jake, I said quietly. I should go. Don't take it personally, he called after me. Maybe this will motivate you to aim a little higher. I left without arguing, took the elevator down through my own building, walked past my own concierge desk, drove home in my 2-year-old Honda Civic, which I'd chosen for its reliability and fuel efficiency. That evening, I sat in my home office and reviewed the lease agreements for Metropolitan Heights. Jake's file showed he'd signed a 12-month lease 6 weeks ago. First month, last month, security deposit, $12,600 upfront. His application listed a salary of $78,000 from Morrison Marketing Group. Respectable, but far from the fortune he'd been implying all evening. I also noted that Morrison Marketing had laid off 30% of its workforce in the past year. Jake's position wasn't particularly secure. I spent an hour reviewing the building's lease termination policies and tenant conduct guidelines. The next morning, I called my property management company. Patricia, this is Emma Chin. I need you to handle a lease termination for Metropolitan Heights. Unit 3C, tenant Jake Morrison. The reason is conduct inconsistent with building community standards. Should I schedule a formal review process? No, this is a direct owner decision. Call him this morning and inform him that his lease is terminated effective immediately. He has 30 days to vacate per the lease terms. Any specific reason I should provide? Simply state that it's the building owner's decision and that the termination is final and non-negotiable. At 10:23 that morning, my phone rang. Emma. Jake's voice was frantic. The craziest thing just happened. The property management company called and said my lease is terminated. They said it's the building owner's decision. That's terrible, Jake. Did they give you a reason? Something about conduct inconsistent with building standards. But that doesn't make any sense. I haven't done anything wrong. A pause. Emma, you don't happen to know anyone in real estate, do you? Anyone who might help me understand what's happening? The irony was exquisite. Jake was asking his minimum wage stepsister for help navigating a real estate crisis at the building she owned. I might know someone who could provide some information, I said carefully. 2 hours later, he called again. I got a letter. They're saying I violated a community standards policy by discriminating against other tenants based on economic status. But Emma, I never said anything like that about other tenants. The only time I talked about people not belonging in nice places was, I heard the silence stretch. Then quietly, oh God, what did you say about me, Jake? I said some things. About minimum wage workers. About people not belonging in luxury buildings. But Emma, you're not even a tenant. How could that violate their policy? Maybe because I was a guest in the building and your comments created a hostile environment. That's not fair. I was just talking about economic realities. You said I don't belong in nice places. You said minimum wage workers like me ruin neighborhoods. You said I was embarrassing and couldn't dress appropriately for the building. I didn't mean, Jake. What you meant was that you thought you were better than me because of money. And apparently building management doesn't want tenants who treat people that way. Emma, please, is there anything you can do? I'll lose everything. My deposit, my first and last month. I don't have anywhere else to go. I told him I'd make some calls. What I actually did was call Patricia back and instruct her to send written notice specifying that the termination was due to public disparagement of other residents based on perceived socioeconomic status, in direct violation of the building's community standards clause. The calls continued for 3 days. Jake cycled through anger, bargaining, desperation. He offered additional fees, community service agreements, public apologies. I held the decision. On the 4th day, I called him back. Jake, before I make any calls, I need you to understand something. This isn't really about building policy. This is about the fact that you've spent years treating me like I was beneath you because of assumptions you made about my financial situation. Emma, you never once asked about my actual career. You decided I was a failure and treated me accordingly in front of 30 people. I was wrong. You were cruel, and not just to me. To anyone you perceived as being lower on some economic ladder you invented, I can change. Jake, let me ask you something. What do you think my actual job is? A pause. I thought you worked in some office, administrative stuff. I own a real estate investment company, portfolio worth $156 million. The silence that followed lasted nearly 2 minutes. That's not possible. I own Metropolitan Heights, Jake. I've owned it for 2 years. You've been paying rent to me. Another silence. But you live in that small apartment. You drive that old car. I choose to live modestly because I learned early that how you treat people reveals your character, not your bank balance. Emma, I had no idea. That's exactly right. You had no idea, and you treated me badly anyway. What does that tell you about yourself? A week later, Robert called. Emma, Jake's family. Surely you can work something out. Robert, why didn't you speak up at the party? It was awkward. I didn't want to make a scene. But you're comfortable calling me now to ask for special treatment for the person who made that scene at my expense. He had no answer for that. Jake moved out of Metropolitan Heights the following month and found a smaller apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. The experience seemed to genuinely humble him. He reached out several times, but the conversation that meant something came 6 months later. I want to apologize, he said. Not because I want something from you, because I owe you one. I'm listening. I spent years treating you badly because I made assumptions about your worth based on what I thought your financial situation was. That was wrong and it was cruel. He paused. But Emma, I want you to know something. Even if you had been struggling, even if you had been working a minimum wage job, that wouldn't have made you less valuable as a person or less deserving of respect. That surprised me. What made you realize that? Living in my new neighborhood, meeting people who work service jobs, who struggle to pay rent, who can't afford the things I used to take for granted, realizing they're good people with dignity and worth, regardless of their paychecks. I appreciate that, Jake. I'm not asking for forgiveness, and I'm not asking for any favors. I just wanted you to know I understand now that I was wrong about everything. Would you be willing to have coffee sometime? Not to talk about business or money, just to try to rebuild something as people. I considered it carefully. I'm open to that. But any relationship we rebuild will be based on who we are, not on what either of us can do for the other. I understand. We did meet for coffee, and over time, carefully, we rebuilt something based on mutual respect rather than assumed hierarchy. Metropolitan Heights continues to be one of my most successful properties. High occupancy, strong community. The incident with Jake reinforced something I'd always believed. That exclusive doesn't have to mean exclusionary. That you can build something excellent without treating people as lesser. Jake may have been right about one thing that night. People like me don't belong in places where worth is measured only by wealth. We belong in places where worth is measured by how we treat each other. Fortunately, I own several of those places.